Hello, everyone. Welcome back to OpenLine. We are talking about the effort to save and preserve at least 9 historic spots or locations in Nashville that are in danger of being lost, either by demolition or neglect or whatever. This is a list that is put out every year by Historic Nashville. And so we're kind of going through that list this year, talking about some of the buildings, talking about preservation in general in our city. In the first segment, we mentioned 2. We'll mention the rest here in a moment, but let's take some calls. Let's go to Ann. And our guest was Brian Mansfield. He's the Historic Nashville Board President. Ann.
Good evening.
Hello, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. I look forward to your list every year. Right now, I live in East Nashville near the Auto Diesel School. And on that property sits a beautiful antebellum home that was built in the 1800s, property that was original to Percy Warner. And right now, the school has been sold, and the area, along with 36, maybe not quite 36, it could be less, surrounding properties are fixing to be torn down and the neighborhood totally disrupted. Many in the neighborhood want that house that was built in the 1800s that is still on the property preserved. So how does an engaged person like myself, how do we go about seeing to it that we preserve this historic building, that it was a gift from Percy Warner to his daughter or daughter-in-law on their wedding, is protected because the developer said, quote unquote, we're going to try and work it into the deal, and our councilman has, quote unquote, said, we were told blah, blah, blah. But we'd like something more than that, and we've been kept out of any and all conversations. But we do, in fact, want to keep this in our neighborhood and feel it should be protected.
Fascinating. Sure. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ann. Let's listen here. Brian, do you know that building that she's talking about, that home? And
I'm not sure I do, I didn't quite understand what she called it at the very beginning.
It sounded like it's on the property of, or near the Auto Diesel College. It's a 1800s home built in the 1800s,
right?
And they're concerned about it being torn down. The neighborhood wants to keep it. And so let's suppose there is something a neighborhood wants to preserve that how do they fight? What do they do? What do you recommend that Ann and others like her who want to preserve something, how do they begin this process?
Okay. Well, it sounds like they've already done a good job of the first steps, because the first thing that I would recommend that somebody in a situation like that do is to reach out to their council member and talk to them about what they know about the plans for a property. And so it sounds like somebody, either Ann or somebody in Ann's community, has already done that. The one thing that I would say is that if they don't own the property, it's going to be an ongoing issue. And it's going to be something that they have to keep showing up for and keep showing up for and keep showing up for. The other thing that I would do from the council is to watch for like zoning planning commissions and especially zoning appeal board meetings, and get on the mailing lists for the agendas for those meetings and watch for that property to come up for discussion. And when a property like that comes up for discussion before the historical commission or the zoning appeals board or the zoning commission, then the community needs to get out and show up to make their wishes known. Because one of you keep hearing people say 80% of success is showing up. That's especially the case when it comes to preservation fights, because the people that really want something to happen to a property, they'll show up at the meetings. The developers, always show up at the meetings. And if nobody from the community shows up at those meetings to oppose proposed changes or plans, then the council or the board sits there and says, well, the developers care what happens here. The community does not care what happens here. We'll let the developers who own the property do what they want. And so the thing that I would suggest is talk to your council member, keep talking to your council member, find out from them what they recommend that you do if you want to make your wishes known. Get on those mailing lists. You can find those on the Nashville government website, and get on mailing lists for any kind of public board meeting that you want to attend, and you will get those every time they have a meeting, and just watch the agendas for the addresses that you're concerned about.
And these battles can be frustrating, there's no doubt. But
they're always frustrating.
They're always frustrating. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's an orphanage over in the Green Hills area that was lost, right? It was an old orphanage, and now it's being developed.
Yes.
And I believe it was on your list a few years ago, and now the name is escaping me. But
I believe it was, and it just I don't know that there was enough concern from the community to save it, and I don't know what kind of offers came in, but the bottom line is, if you don't own the property, there's only so much you can do.
Right.
And that's kind of what happened in that case.
So just keep your eye on this stuff. Keep showing up.
Yep.
Okay, well, let's keep going over this list. So number 1 through 4. So we did. I took a couple out of order, and so let's start with the first now. 1 through 4 all have to do with 2nd Avenue North, right? So we have, obviously, okay, you can talk about this. We have a picture of it up. This is from the bombing. But why are they on this list?
These are the 4 buildings that suffered the most extensive damage in the Christmas Day bombing. And and that happened last year right after we named our Nashville Nine. About 6 weeks later was the bombing. And we could have put we could have made the entire 9 from the bombing. But these are the 4 buildings that suffered the most extensive damage. One of them, 172 2nd Avenue North, if that building is lost. It's not salvageable. If they haven't done the demolition on that, that's going to happen. There's just no way to save it. The others, there's going to be some kind of restoration and rebuilding and renovation of those properties. But it's going to be an ongoing discussion and an ongoing concern how those are restored. And we would like to see those buildings restored in ways that keep their historic integrity as much as possible, because that's one of the beautiful things about Nashville preservation has been that downtown corner there from the Lower Broad and 2nd Avenue North. Nashville has done a pretty good job of preserving those buildings and keeping that historic integrity of those. I mean, you don't really see very many long stretches of retail and warehouse from the late 19th century in any other city. And so, you look at those and your heart just breaks. And we already know that we have lost some. So to some degree, putting 172 on that list is kind of an in memoriam choice. But the minute but shortly after the cleanup began down on 2nd Avenue, there were volunteers and experts down there pulling salvageable material and brick from those places so that restoration could take place in ways that keeps as much of the original material as possible.
And as I look on, I guess on the statement you all put out, you said, we urge those implementing the rebuilding to make sure the buildings retain as much of their historic and architectural integrity as possible. And that's why they're on this list. Do you
Yes.
feel like that is being done? I mean, basically, of what you know, are you comfortable or you're wary?
Wary is a good word, but we've seen the plans, and there are some very exciting things in the plans. I think that given the devastation down there, I think a lot of people are going to be very happy with what they see in that place. But this is kind of discussion over the details. So I think there's going to be there's going to be a lot of wonderful work done there. Our concern is about the details.
Right. And so when we talk about the Nashville Nine for this year, that's 4 of them right there. Those 4 buildings.
Yes.
There were 4 buildings that were damaged. We just showed you 4 of them. Okay, we're going to take a break now. We'll come back and we'll talk about more. Some on one on Jefferson Street and other places. So we'll take a break, come back, continue our discussion. If you want to call in, there's a number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.